Hello and welcome to Cymera, Britain's only book festival celebrating science fiction, fantasy and horror writing. My name is Anne Landman and I'm the festival's founder and artistic director. Right about now, I'd hope to be welcoming you to beautiful Edinburgh, to our venue The Pleasance, for a weekend packed with events. Writing workshop, panels, readings, open mics, a quiz, a ceilidh, 2 plays. We had so much in store for you. Thank you for joining us online instead, to be part of our programme from the safety of your homes. We're very excited to still bring you a fantastic lineup of speakers. We'd ask you that you support our speakers, and there's many ways you can do that. You can buy their books or borrow them from the library. You can donate to them directly via their Patreon or Ko-fi. You will find the links for that below in the description. We encourage you to buy a ticket for our events, even the pre-recorded ones. All ticket money will go directly to our speakers. You can also donate to the festival, and all donations via the donation page will be split between our speakers, once we've covered our costs like the Zoom account. Thank you again for joining us in this brave new world of digital events. We hope you have a chance to check out all 33 of ours over the weekend. Please let us know what you think of them. Do get in touch via social media, the chat function in Zoom, or drop us an email on info@cymerafestival.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we look forward to seeing you in person next year for Cymera 2021.
Hello and welcome to this pre-recorded event as part of Cymera 2020 called Show and Tell, featuring Chris Baldie and Babs Stevenson. My name is David Bishop and I will be chairing this event today, which explores the different ways that authors tell stories. But I'm going to start by introducing our two guests for today. So, my first guest is Babs Stevenson, who grew up in Glasgow but always dreamed of moving to be beside the seaside, imagining a world full of pirates and marine monsters. She has a background in veterinary. No, I can't say that word at all. No, Babs, save me here. How do I say it?
Veterinary medicine.
There we go. She has a background in that, and but studied creative writing at the Open University, and has had a novel published and numerous short stories. Indeed, her humorous sketch about Martians applying to join the Commonwealth was performed at Glasgow's Tron Theatre during the 2014 Commonwealth Games. She now lives in Orkney, and so the seaside is always close and her dreams are never far away. Babs' short story collection, Where the Ocean Meets the Sea, has just been published by Luna Press. Literally just a week ago, I think, was the official publication date. And it gathers together 11 of her tall tales under one cover. Our second guest for today is Chris Baldie, a self-employed graphic designer based in Glasgow who writes and draws comics as a creative outlet away from his day job. He created the 6-issue series Space Captain, Captain of Space with writer Michael Park, and it became a great success on the crowdfunding platform Kickstarter. Now Chris is writing and drawing everything himself, with his first solo project, Rolled a One, published internationally by Glasgow's own BHP Comics. It's the story of new teen in town Alice, who finds fun and friendship when she joins a ragtag band of role players. Chris won the accolade of Best Artist at the Scottish Independent Comic Book Awards, also known as the SICBAs, an award definitely in need of a better acronym, last year for his work on Roll to One. So Babs and Chris, welcome to Cymera 2020.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So I'm going to start with a question for both of you. I'll let you fight it out over who gets to talk first about this. So each of you has created stories which feature quests and journeys and finding friendships along the way. So the question is, what what drew you to this particular theme, which is a recurring theme in your work up to this point?
I'll let Babs go first.
Yeah, okay, ladies first, of course. Like I said, I've always loved the sea. And so just looking at the sea stories that have come immediately, I've wondered, what's on the other side, what's below, what's above even. And I love krakens and I like Jules' favourite, 20,000 Leagues Beneath the Sea, with the giant octopus or squid came and took the sea when I was younger. I quite like Mason Frail. So yeah, I mean, quests and adventures I think are just part of fantasy. I don't think you can have a fantasy adventure without some sort of quest.
Mm. Chris?
Yeah, I don't know, most of my stories aren't planned. I always tend to want to try and achieve something I haven't done. So with Space Captain, I'd never done a long form comic before, and I had no plan on doing it. I simply came into the office one day and joked that I had a fun idea for a comic called Space Captain, Captain of Space. And a week later, I worked with Michael Park. He came to me with a completed script for issue 1. Without asking if I wanted to do it or anything. And almost exactly what you see in issue 1. There's a few bits and pieces changed, and it was too good not to do. So I kind of launched myself into that. That ended up going for 6 issues. And with Roll to 1, I had the idea of trying to tell a story about the kids, but also interlayer it with another story throughout the D&D campaign, basically. So it was more of a technical exercise for me of trying to tell 2 stories at once, overlapping each other. I wanted to see if I could do it. So that was kind of born from just wanting to experiment more than anything.
Okay.
And D&D for me, I've played it since I was a kid, so it came naturally to make that story, being somewhat of an outsider in a group of new D&D people.
Mm.
So, yeah, it was easy to draw from.
Cool. And indeed, I have a copy of Roll to 1 here, which I managed to buy just before lockdown. I think the day before lockdown, the publisher Shah sent it to me in the post. And I was like, yay! Finally got hold of a copy. Alas, I don't have a physical copy of your book, Babs, to hold up and wave around.
Neither do I, actually.
That's terrible. So, I mean, is it being published in as a book as well as the ebook?
My book.
Yes.
It has been published. My sister's got a copy, but she doesn't live in Orkney, so she was able to get a copy, and the post hasn't arrived for a while. It should be on its way.
The joys of life.
There are copies out there.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, I'm hoping to get hold of one myself. Good. But I've read the PDF, so that was thoroughly enjoyable. So Babs, how did the collection come about? How was it that you came to have this collection published?
Actually, quite a surprise to me, because I'd written some stories for odd online magazines and small magazines over the years. And then in, I think it was 2015, I sent a story that I wrote while decorating my house. I just bought the house and I was decorating, and this story came to me while I was decorating. It was a bit off the wall, since I was wallpapering, but I didn't know what to do with it. But Luna Press had a competition where they wanted sort of fantasy and sci-fi stories. So I thought, well, I'll just send it off. So they liked it, and they published it in their Beyond Realities anthology. Following year, I sent them another story that they liked. And then actually out of the blue, I think it's like about 2.5 years ago, Francesca from Luna asked me if I could put together a collection. So I said, I think, yes, I think I'll manage that. So yeah, it came from that, yes.
Oh, yeah. She twisted your arm. They twisted your arm.
Well, it didn't take much twisting, but yes.
Yes. Easily persuaded. And Chris, how did Roll to 1 end up with BHP?
So like most of my work, I release it myself. So I did Roll to 1, and it was always meant to just be a self-published piece. And like with Space Captain, I use Kickstarter. as a sort of pre-order system of sorts, because very luckily I've had great success with each Kickstarter, and I always achieve my goal, my funding goal, so printing is covered, and each time I get about 300 pre-orders roughly per Kickstarter. So I think running through Kickstarter was successful again, and genuinely just seemed to sell well at the conventions I was attending. And through that, there was trickles of people wanting to pick up the book and redo it, I suppose. And Shah, I've got a great relationship with Shah because we're both in Glasgow and I've been part of Glasgow Comic Con and stuff. So it just seemed a natural fit for them to pick it up. So we redid 8 pages, I think, created 8 new pages to bulk out a bit and create a new story. And they re-released it for me, and they've got great connections. So they were able to get it published throughout North America and Australia and stuff as well, I think. Which was great. And I was in Brooklyn in October, and I went into a comic shop just by pure accident, and I found a copy of it in there, so that was a nice moment.
Walk and see your work on the shelf in another country.
Yeah, a tiny little comic shop in Brooklyn, so yeah, nice.
Babs, your collection, it's 11 stories in it, but 6 of the stories are previously published, 2 of them from the anthologies that you mentioned. And then you've got the 5 new stories. So my question is, how do you choose which stories to put in from the work you've had published previously? And how did you decide what sort of stories you wanted to tell in the new stories?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Basically, I don't just write fantasy, so I had to look for sort of stories that I'd published that were fantasy. There's one more science fiction rather than fantasy, and there's one more sort of darker horror than the sort of lighter fantasy. That'd be a bit funny, but the lighter fantasies. The ones that I wrote, sort of, they just come when I was thinking about it. I don't know. I wrote one especially for Francesca that's based in the Francesca Pavini of Luna. It's based in Italy, and actually I think that's one of my favourite ones. We have a dragon and a pangolin going a little tour to La Scala in Milan. So it's some of them come, some of them don't. And another one I wrote, I've got a friend who's very into environmental things, and she wanted me to write an environmental story. So there's one about a plastic duck and things like that. So I don't know. Sometimes I'm just gardening; they just sort of come.
And Chris, so Roll to One, why this is your first solo project? I mean, you've collaborated previously, so why Roll to One as sort of the Crystal solo show?
It's not a great light to paint myself, but I'm really hard to work with. I'm a bit of a control freak, and it's hard for me to give up a part of a story that I think is going to work really well if they want to go another way. Mm-hmm. So I kind of just got a bit stubborn in the end and just wanted to try it myself. I tried Roll the One. Again, it was an experiment to see if I could do it, and so I picked the subject of Dungeons and Dragons as a subject because it was easy for me to write, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. And then it's the thing that's very noticeable is the fact that D&D and role-playing games seem to be having a real resurgence at the moment. In fact, there's actually some role-playing events are happening at Cymera this year. Obviously, that would have been all in the room, but this year they're happening in a sort of semi-digital form. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but so there's going to be actual D&D events, and I think they've invited some of the guest writers to come in and play a character for an hour during the festival. So it is very noticeable how D&D seems to be making this comeback, this resurgence. Why do you think at this moment in time people want to be playing D&D again or role-playing games?
I think attitudes in general have shifted towards, so when I was a kid, D&D was something that we had to whisper about, and we had to do in private because, it's a bunch of what they would class as nerds just hang around rolling dice, drinking Coke. So we kind of had to hide it as a kid, I suppose. But nowadays, I think the internet especially has broadened everyone's horizons to what fun can actually be had in niche things, and popularization as well. So TV shows will often do a D&D themed episode, and it brings to light what it actually is. Sometimes it's not done well, but for the most part, I think folk are just more open to it. So I think everyone's now trying it. Parents are trying it with their kids, and I think it's just a natural form of storytelling as well. Like, you just get to improvise with your friends, and the story adapts, and it's just, what's more fun than that?
Yeah, and of course the opportunity to pretend to be something.
Yeah, especially in the last 9 weeks, I can imagine it's a great sense of escapism.
Yeah, completely. And as you say, TV shows, the Netflix show Stranger Things had D&D as a.
Yeah.
I think that's certainly had an impact on helping to popularize it. Absolutely.
And Sheldon Cooper plays it in The Big Bang.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yes. And then shows like Community will have a sort of D&D themed episode. So shows like that sort of help to broaden people's perception of it. Babs, when I was reading through the collection and thoroughly enjoyed it, by the way, your stories are told in a way that's quite vivid and visual. So you really bring the scene alive on the page, painting pictures with words if you want. So what sort of techniques do you use to try and bring your stories alive on the page, to sort of communicate them to the reader, to put the visuals into our heads?
It's quite funny in the film Amadeus about Mozart. Basically, it's all in his head, and the rest is just sort of scribbling and bibbling onto the page. It's a bit like that. I see the whole story in my head, and then it's just trying to scribble and bibble it down onto the page. But I always send them stories to my sister before I send them anywhere else, and if she doesn't like them, that's it. They're banned. So she's my number one certifier, I should imagine, because if she doesn't like them, she's my target audience, so she doesn't like them, nobody is.
Yes. Very important to have a good beta reader, somebody that can give you sort of an honest reader's reaction to the story. So, Chris, who do you share your work with before it goes out into public?
I have a few sources for that. Colin Bell, I'll shout out his name just now, who wrote the series Dungeon Fun with Niels Lawrence and other works. He's generally a good sounding board. I can require him, or I can rely on him, being honest. But for Roll the One, it was actually interesting. I sent it to a friend, Will Morris in Edinburgh, and he gave me some feedback and stuff. But he said if I wanted an honest opinion, I should send it to Amy Lockwood, who's also another friend from Edinburgh. So I did, and I never really. I'm friends with Amy, but not someone I would chat to or share stories with specifically. But she was super honest, and all the parts I was sort of worried about in my head, she immediately put up front and said I didn't like this. So Roll the One was an entirely different story in the first version. And after her feedback, I went back and rewrote the entire thing. And as a consequence, it's much better. So although I'm hard to work with and I don't like taking people's input on story, perhaps I should be more open to this. Because it's definitely led to a better story. So yeah, it's just mostly friends. My girlfriend Mackenzie as well reads most of my stuff.
Yeah. And so Babs working with Luna Press. So what was, obviously because you were writing new stories for the collection, so you showed them to your sister to see what she thinks. So what was it like working with an editor on the collection?
It's great actually. They're all very helpful and they're very friendly, so no problems at all with that. No, it's good. Yeah, I think because I'm a member of a couple of writing groups that are all writing groups up here, all quite intense. I mean, they'll give you genuine feedback that you might not always want. So hopefully they were in a sort of a reasonable shape before I actually sent them away. So, but certainly, you know, Robert Mallon at Luna, he's an excellent editor, and he's great to work with.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Chris, how you were saying that it was the parts of the story that you were a little bit unsure of yourself, that when you gave it to the other person, that was the things they zeroed in on instantly. It's sort of, as writers, we kind of know where something isn't working, but we're willing to see if maybe we can get away with it sometimes. Maybe other people won't notice.
Yeah, there's always a voice of doubt in your head as well, that you think, oh, that's not good, but maybe it's just me overthinking it. But then when someone comes back and instantly points that out, it's kind of soul crushing as well. But in the end, yeah, you have to take a step back. Even don't look at it for a few days, look at it again. If it still doesn't sit right with you, you've got to scrap it and rewrite it on. It's hard work. Like, writing anything is a slog anyway, but having to rewrite stuff is 10 times worse. But yeah, it's got to be done.
Yeah. So when this was happening, was this just script that you had, or had you already started? Was these drawn pages as well? Or?
No, I script everything out, and I kind of write it more like a movie script or a TV script, I suppose. I have scenes and I have dialogue all formatted in that sense. It just makes it easier for me to visualize, I think, being able to break it all down. And I'm quite a strong, what's the word I'm looking for? I like to encourage people to write it thoroughly first before they start drawing. I feel like you're going to fix so many bugs in your script. It's not the right word, but if you write it all down, look it over before you start sketching anything, because yeah, you'll realize problems halfway through drawing it that you're going to have to rewrite if you don't think about it first.
Yeah, and of course, you know, the writing of a script takes considerably shorter amount, or the rewriting of script can be a lot quicker than having to redraw an entire book. So.
Yeah, the script, although it's a slog to do, I've been trying to. A lot of people ask, as a comics artist, a lot of people ask you how long it takes to make a comic, and I have to roughly estimate it as about, for me anyway, maybe 10 hours per page. So a 30-page comic is going to take me 300 hours to make, and probably, you know, 7 or 8 of those hours are drawing it. So don't make your life harder by writing a bad script that you're going to have to redraw it again and again and again. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at least with Photoshop now, things can be fixed a lot quicker than.
Sure. Yeah.
So, Babs, in the collection, you've got the sort of the first half of the collection is the first 10 stories, and some of them are sort of between 4 and I think up to about 20 pages each. So they're relatively brisk as short stories go. And then you sort of the second half of the collection is one story, one long story, a novella almost. So, what was your experience like of writing this novella-length story when for the collection? Because it was written specially for the collection, wasn't it?
Yes and no. It was certainly put into the collection, and a lot of work was done. But the basic story had been written beforehand, and I had previewed it at a Scottish Association of Writers, sort of Dragon's Den type event, and I had got quite good feedback on it. It was a slightly longer piece, but the feedback I got was basically maybe it needed, editing and cutting back. So I was able to cut it back, which fitted nicely into the sort of basic word count well. So it worked in 2 ways. It was we did want the word count up a bit, and it was a story that I liked and I thought fitted into the collection.
Okay, and Chris, now you've collaborated with writers in the past, Michael, and with others, and now that you're sort of the whole thing, you're both writer and artist, so you're the complete package on it. How different is that creative process for you, having worked with somebody else in the past?
It's pretty lonely, I suppose. You don't get to bounce ideas off anyone. Yeah, I don't know. I do enjoy it because I'm a solitary person by nature, so I do enjoy working alone. But I think having that person to, as I say, bounce ideas off of it, it worked really well with Space Captain and with Michael. And luckily he wasn't precious with his script. He let me give a lot of input. So yeah, I do miss that. And I think when you don't have that writing partner, you do doubt yourself a hell of a lot more. Recently, especially, I haven't been able to bring myself to write a full-length comic. So I've been testing out the water with small 5 to 6 page mini comics, just to kind of try and warm myself up with anything. So yeah, I do miss writing with someone, I think, and I will try it again in the future. I just need to find the right idea, I think.
Yes, and then the right partner to work with as well.
Yeah, and none of the people I worked with, Michael was great, and so was Holly for Never Ever After. I burned myself out with those types of stories, so I needed something new, I think.
Yeah. And Babs, what about you? I see in your list of past credits, do I see some co-writing has happened in the past?
That's a bit of fun, yes. I've done co-writing twice. Once with a friend, another writing friend. We worked on a sort of young adult series about ghosts, which I think we're still working on it. It seems to perpetually need updated. But the main thing, I work with my sister's a historian, so we just sort of self-published some Stone Age whodunit set in Orkney.
I'm trying to imagine what a Stone Age whodunit looks like.
Well, they're quite popular here in Orkney.
Okay, all right. All right. I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work. Yes, there was a great cartoon strip called BC, which I think ran for years, which was about a sort of a Stone Age caveman character who went round sort of, but that was pure comedy. There was no whodunit involved in that, as I seem to recall. So I'm just going to ask Chris about Space Captain of Space, because obviously you have to give him his full title. Because I bought all those from the Kickstarter when they were being published at the time. And this is purely a selfish question, just for my own benefit. But do you think there will ever be a collected volume of Space Captain of Space?
Not as long as I have 1,200 copies of the single issues to sell. Taking up boxes and boxes of space in both my flat and in the office. Yeah, there's a lot of single issues. I would love to. As a graphic designer specifically, all I want to do is make paper products, really. I want that nice bound book out. Yeah. Which is why in the last Kickstarter, I made the little collector's box, essentially, which was lovingly letterpressed by Glasgow Press. I wanted to make something for everyone that had backed all 6 issues. I wanted them to have a nice collected edition. Because if I do make a complete edition in the future, I don't want them to feel like they've lost out and have to buy it again. I want them to have a nice little product. So yes, I would like to, but I would also like to get rid of all these Space Captains.
Yes, the joys of self-publishing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, always the danger you just end up surrounded by books. I mean, the one thing to be said for it is, you know, they are great for insulating a room.
Yeah.
I did a project which was the history of 2000 AD, and I collected every issue of 2000 AD ever published, which was about 2,000 copies. So they were all in these boxes, and I sold them all when the book was published because I didn't need them anymore. And suddenly my office was so much colder because I hadn't realized it was bigger, but it was colder because suddenly all my insulation had just left the room.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a very understanding business partner because whenever I run the Kickstarter and it gets to the end, I take over the office essentially for 3 or 4 days of packing and materials everywhere. It's a nightmare. The whole place is just a riot.
Fulfillment office.
Yeah.
Okay, so Babs, so you've had a novel published in the past. You've had short stories published. You wrote the sketch that was performed during the Commonwealth Games. So, are there any other storytelling media you'd like to dip your toe into? Any other areas you want to try?
Not at the moment, because I think I've actually sort of found more of a niche now in fantasy. The novel that I wrote was actually a historical novel, and it's partly veterinary medicine orientated and partly organ music, which is my other sort of passion. But I like writing historical, but I think I prefer writing fantasy. So my next thing is a historical fantasy. Yeah.
Okay. And Chris, you said before how you're a bit of a control freak, like to retain control of the beast as it's being built and created. Do you think you would consider writing a script for somebody else to draw? Do you think you could let go?
Yeah, I think I would. I would definitely enjoy writing something for someone else to draw than I would drawing something for someone else to write. That makes sense.
But somebody else has written, perhaps.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, I think I would. There's so many artists I know whose artwork I just adore. So I would love it if someone else drew my work, to be honest with you. And Space Captain originally was supposed to be drawn by someone else. It was supposed to be drawn by my friend Dave Morrow, who is an incredible artist, but he got 4 pages in and he's like, I can't be bothered doing this. So he gave up, and so I just had to draw it at that point. And that worked out for me. It was great. It was a great way to push myself into a style I wasn't ready to try, but by issue 6 I was pretty fluid with. So yeah, I would love other people to draw my work. That's actually the dream, I think, more than anything.
It's always fascinated to me that the number of artists that I've met through the years in comics who secretly what they really want to do is write, and I think part of it's about having to have drawn some terrible scripts in their career up to that point. Obviously, not the case with you, fortunately, but equally, I think it's the chance to sort of total storytelling effectively.
Yeah. I think speaking for myself, I got comfortable with my drawing. I still think I'm not great, but I'm comfortable with the level I got to. I can tell a story pretty well, but I think I've reached my peak of what I can do. Whereas I see friends doing work that's far superior, and I know if I could write something that they could draw, it would be better than anything I could write and draw. So yeah.
It's always the challenge. It's trying to sort of recognize, and also you can write something which you may be able to recognize as just it's out with either your capabilities, or you can just recognize somebody else may draw this better than me. They have a skill set that is different from you. Yeah. I know an awful lot of artists fight shy of drawing horses, feet, or crowds for some reason.
Yeah. I'm fine with hands. Hands is the usual big one, but I'm fine with those. But feet and any sort of animal, actually, I'm just terrible with. So that's why Space Captain was great, because everyone was an alien, so you could just.
They look like the way they look. Babs, one of the things that I often hear said is that a good writer was a good reader first. Because we all grow up reading stories and being inspired by that. That's what often leads people to start writing. So can you, what are you reading at the moment, and who are some of the writers that inspired you to become a writer in the first place?
What I'm reading at the moment is actually, it's mainly things that have been written by people that I know. So they had a new book out I've got a friend, David Monroe, who's written a book called Georgina. It's a sort of history book, and it's just mainly writing, because sort of friends give you books to write a review for them. So I don't tend to get reading any classic. But in the past, I mean, I love I first did sort of fantasy, I think. My mother, when I was about 3, had this massive big fairy story, and where we always could pick a story at bedtime. And I think I picked every night was called The Crocodile Plays Hanky Panky, about the crocodile that went to the dentist and he wouldn't behave. And I think my mother could just repeat it off by hand. She didn't need the book. But I loved the sort of children's stories of Oscar Wilde, and The Remarkable Rocket and The Selfish Giant and The Devoted Friend, things like that. I loved them. And I adore Dr. Seuss. I mean, I could read Dr. Seuss forever. And actually like comic poetry, you know, like The Owl and the Pussycat and things like that. And I think that I will never see a billboard lovely as a tree, even just little stupid little rhyme. I always think poetry should rhyme, but obviously doesn't. But so yeah, I think there's quite a lot of things. I think, like you say, the more you read, the maybe more ideas you get for your own work. Not plagiarizing, but you do tend to get more ideas. And even with, like I said, the anthologies, you've obviously got to buy the book or get the book if you've got a story in the anthology. So reading everybody else's story, and it's so fascinating. You think, I wish I'd written that. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of great things out there.
See, and now I want to read The Crocodile Played Hanky Panky. That's the best title.
I have no idea what a storybook it was in. It's a massive big fairy tale book, and I loved I think mainly, actually, I mean, only about 3 at the time, probably more the picture of the crocodile that I liked rather than the story per se. But I think that's, actually, I think in fantasy sometimes the picture's just as expressive the story sometimes, yeah.
No, absolutely. And Chris, what about you? What were sort of the comics or the graphic novels that you read growing up that inspired you, and what are you reading at the moment, if you are?
Well, I'm from a small town called Cymera down on the west coast, southwest coast. And we didn't have comics really. There was no comic shop in our town. And, you know, you could get maybe like a Spider-Man or something, but it never really interested me. So comics weren't really a thing until later in high school when we could travel to Ayr or Glasgow. And stories like Hellboy were the big one for me, I think. Which kind of mixed sci-fi with fantasy and myth, and it's just a perfect blend of everything. But in terms of books, even actually books, I was a terrible child. I never read anything. But when I was about 20, something snapped in me, and actually it wasn't something. It was Terry Pratchett, and I discovered one of his books halfway through the series. And as soon as I'd finished it, I had to immediately devour everything. So I think I was reading 3 or 4 books a month of his for a year, and I just read everything he ever produced. And now that the lockdown has been in place, books have obviously been a restriction. I've actually gone back to them in the last couple of weeks and started rereading them all for the first time since I was 20, I think. And they're still great. I still think everything he did was fantastic.
No, he's an amazing writer and has a terrible loss. And what about comics? Any comics or graphic novels that you've been enjoying? I know sometimes with artists I say, oh, well, what graphic novels have you been enjoying? And they'll just talk about the art and they won't even have read the story, which I'm like, slightly frustrates me because they're not a writer, so that would be...
Yeah. So again, I recently, just before the lockdown as well, just by pure coincidence, I started rereading Hellboy again. Still holds up to be fantastic. But I would say in the last few years, my main drive or inspiration, there's like a few key books. And one of them is This One Summer. Is that the right name of it?
Yes, yeah.
I had a bit of a blank there. It's a fantastic book. It's just 2 young girls who I think have a summer friendship, essentially. It's just so expertly written and beautifully drawn. I can't stop thinking about it. Whenever someone asks what I'm reading, that's the first thing that comes to mind. And when anyone asks for a recommendation, that's the first that comes out, really. The Hilda series with Nobrow was quite a revelation as to what you could do with style and colour, and again, interweaving fantasy. into a story. So yeah, I think those two off the top of my head are certainly inspiration recently.
Yeah, absolutely. This one's summer because it's from the children's, the sort of these 11, 12-year-old girls' point of view. There's so much subtext that's layered into it. It's all the stories that are going on behind the events, and it's all hinted at, and it's for the reader to perceive it or not perceive it.
Yeah, and even though it's a story of two young girls, there's elements of their struggle that is universal to everyone. So when you read it, you're like, oh, I remember that feeling when I was a kid. Like that horrible feeling of just being the odd one out. Or, yeah, it's great. Great story.
Okay. So, Babs, what are you working on at the moment? Obviously, your collection has just been published, but knowing how slowly the wheels of book publishing can grind, you probably finished work on it a good few months ago now.
Yeah, and like I said, I've got Luna have I've signed a contract with Luna for like a full-length fantasy history, which will be out next May. So we're basically working on the sort of editing and things like that. So I'm quite busy with that. But there's always new stories coming up, so I'm also working on that.
Oh, so can you tell us more about the
fantasy story with an organ in it? Because I actually like an organ. So yeah, I'm working quite a few things. It's actually, I shouldn't say it, but I quite like lockdown, so it gives me a great opportunity because I'm not doing very much actual real work just now to write. But it's, in one sense, I mean, it's a terrible situation, but yeah, it's a bit of a silver lining for some people.
Yes. It's been interesting talking to writers over the past, 10 weeks we're into it now. For some people, they've found lockdown to sort of be a liberation, an opportunity to sort of clear away some of the clutter of their life, and they can go, oh, I can just concentrate and get some work done and do some writing. But for other people, they've found it, I work with writers, and a lot of them have found it quite debilitating. They've found that they haven't been able to work. Some people I know haven't been able to read. They find that they can't concentrate. And I think part of that's to do with the environment that they're in, no doubt. But it seems to be impacting how people are consuming stories, but also the sort of stories that people are telling as a consequence as well.
Yeah, I've unfortunately, I think, been on the other end of it, so I'm quite jealous of Babs. Everything I was doing just ground to a halt. I think, well, because my day job continues, thankfully, very thankful for it. But I used to have an office in the city centre, and all my friends were in the office. It's a great work experience, but at 5 o'clock I would leave the office and that was it, a shutdown. Whereas now I'm working from this tiny little cupboard over here, a little work studio. So I'm working in there during the day, and that's usually where I would be drawing at night. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it comes to the end of the workday and I don't really want to be in there anymore. So I've been consuming a lot of TV for sure. And I think inputting content is very good for outputting. So I'm hoping this is all just a store for later. I can create new ideas. But in the last couple of weeks, I think I've been trying a bit harder to do actual work. But yeah, ground to a halt entirely when the whole started.
Yeah, no, it's different. I mean, it's everybody's experience of lockdown is different, and then some people live in the countryside, some people live in cities, some people live in small flats, and there's sort of no escape, and you can't go anywhere. So that makes it harder. Whereas, I mean, I'm slightly fortunate. I live outside of Edinburgh, so I'm able to. You can actually go for a walk, and have been able to go for a walk, which has been a blessed relief. I think if I'd been, we were trying to imagine what life would have been like if we'd been stuck in our flat when we used to live in London. I don't even like to contemplate it, but yes. And I think the other thing I think that has impacted people who do write or draw stories, their ability to do that partly is sort of the uncertainty of how long is this going on for as well. I think as sort of, if you've got something that you have an absolute deadline on, that slightly focuses the mind. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, so Babs, you were telling us about the project that you're working on at the moment. So that's coming out hopefully May next year, you were saying.
Yes, yeah.
Does it have a working title?
The one that coming out next year is the Diligences of Monsieur de Haricot. It's set mainly in Paris, so he's a French gentleman.
Excellent. And Chris, what are you working on at the moment?
Well, since
not, the case may be.
yes, in December I decided, as I think I mentioned earlier, I was trying to work in just small 5 or 6 page comics, just to try different forms of storytelling or different styles of art even. So I'm going to continue with that. I want to get nice 3 or 4 pieces. So I've done 2, so I want to get 2 more done, I think. So it's just trying to decide what I want to do, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And I think they can read at least one of those. There's a link to that up on your website. It's the sort of the silent burglar story.
Yeah, well, there's 2 now. There's the burglar story and there's one about a loss of gravity on the Earth. So yeah, they can find that on our website.
Cool. And what's the website address to save people a search?
They can go to freecomics.chrisbaldie.com.
Okay, cool. And if people want to follow you on social media, Babs, are you a social media creature or are you a digital recluse?
I am on Twitter and Facebook, although I don't tend to post an awful lot. I can't even remember what I'm on. I think on Twitter it's Boo2111, and on Facebook it's Babs Stevenson, I think. But yeah, I probably just on Twitter, I probably just sort of retweet other people's posts rather than write too many of my own.
Okay.
Facebook,
Oh, well.
yeah, it's whatever.
Yes, indeed, yes. Well, I mean, they can always go to the Lunar Press website as well to find out.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for the new book when that's coming along. Okay, well, that's probably about it for us today. I want to say an enormous thank you to Babs Stevenson and to Chris Baldie for joining us today and for joining us from their various lockdown enclaves where they're squirreled away, writing and drawing, or not, as the case may be. But keep an eye out for their work. So Babs' collection, Where the Ocean Meets the Sea, has just been published by Lunar Press.
That's actually the sky.
Sorry. Where the Ocean Meets the Sea would make no sense at all, would it? That would be a very obtuse title. Where the Ocean Meets the Sky makes considerably more sense. Thank you. And so that's just been published by Lunar Press. Highly recommend it. And Chris Baldie's Roller One is available from BHP Comics. You can search for that online. But thank you both for coming along, giving up your glorious this weekend. We're recording this a week in advance of Cymera Festival actually happening. And this is the most glorious Saturday afternoon. And I've got these 2 poor people trapped indoors with me talking about writing and storytelling. But there are always ways to spend an afternoon.
A pleasure.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.